And India confirmed their slot in the Super 8s. Welcome to the shiny side. I'm your host, Faris. And we have with us, also joining us from the USA, Omer Basir. Omer, welcome to the show. I think we have to talk, we're going to talk about in detail about India's win, today's match, and also India's team going forward. But I think the story of the tournament has to be the USA so far.
Hi, Faris. Yeah, I mean, they wanted to, grow the sport in the US. What better way than your local team doing so well?
Yeah, yeah. And I think they've been a revelation, right? And it has been great to see. But to kick things off, I would do a 30-second summary of the game. So India won the toss, opted to chase. They went in unchanged. The USA's innings didn't really get anywhere. They lost 2 wickets in the first over and looked like they could be a massive disaster, but they kind of held steady until Nitish Kumar came in, scored 27 at 23, which on this pitch is a pretty aggressive innings. And they kind of managed to get to about 110 for 8, not the highest score on this ground in the last couple of weeks, but very close to it. Um, um, but when it came to India's batting, India lost both Kohli and Rohit really early. They were 15 for 2. And from there, it looked like Punt and Sky started doing the repair job. Punt got out soon as well. And at some point at 44 for 3, it looked like this could be a dicey game. But Sky and Dubey kind of took them all the way to the end, and they won with a few balls to spare. So yeah, 40 for 40 seconds. So Omar, I guess we have to start off with the second innings, right? Because no matter what the score, I think the psychological boost a team gets against India when they take both Kohli and Rohit out early is massive, right? And at that point, there was a bit of buzz in the ground. How did you see that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. We were all curious to see how the Indian run chase would go because of how the recent games have went. And this guy, Saurabh Netravalkar, right? What a story he's got.
So the
And he came out with the
Oracle
same.
engineer added Kohli and Rohit's dismissal to his CV.
Yeah. So what a story for him, right? So I guess let me start off by saying, so this Faraz Khan, a friend of mine, shared this with me, right? He was watching a video of Saurabh, and he said that, he's achieved every Indian guy's dream, right? So which is studying at a top US university, working in tech, playing for the national cricket team, and defeating Pakistan. And like you said, on top of it, he's added Kohli and Rohit's wicket. So what
And a
a
green card.
dream start. Yeah, exactly. So it's been a great journey. He came out, yeah, he's just, man, amazing bowler, putting it in the spot, and he was almost unplayable in those first few. Even he got 2 wickets, but even the punt, he had a few close calls.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think amazing start, and I think the game, like many recent games, went really down to the last couple of overs.
Yeah. And it's almost like every single game at New York, especially, has had the exact same template, right? But I guess, yeah, we spoke about Punt. So Punt came in, he scored 18 or 20. He didn't look the most fluent, but he survived. But then you had Dubey and Sky. They got together. The score was 44 for 3. Now, both of them have been under a bit of pressure for different reasons. Dubey's just been picked ahead of guys like perhaps Rinku Singh and a couple of others. And he bowled for the first time in months today. He went for about, I think, 10 or 11 of the, which is pretty expensive with this track. So I think he came under a bit of pressure. There were some questions about his spot in the 11. Same for Sky, who hadn't had a knock for India of late. And he's came back from injury in the IPL as well. I think both of them kind of steadied the ship, but they also kind of, I guess, from their own confidence going forward, they're probably crucial knocks today.
Yeah, for sure. I think important knocks for both of them. I think Sky, he's done enough for India since he's joined the team that I don't think his spot was, in content. There was no issues with that, and I think he showed his the variety of shots he has. I think it was important for him to stick around. So he did that. His catch was dropped. That I think was a turning point. Who knows what would have happened if he was taken out and his catch wasn't dropped. But good, he took advantage of it, and he hit the big, he hit 2 sixes, which on this pitch, 2 sixes and 2 4s is quite a bit.
Yeah, so right? At one point they needed a 48 of 37, and even with 7 wickets in hand, it didn't look that straightforward because they'd only scored 2 boundaries in the last preceding 6 overs, right? So from there, the couple of boundaries were hit. But then I guess we have to talk about, another key moment, which was the 5-run penalty. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, they were pretty. unfortunate. So for the viewers who don't know about this, right, there's a new rule where you're supposed to complete your overs within a minute, so within 60 seconds. And now on the grounds, they have this 60-second countdown going between each over, which isn't the best thing when you're at the stadium, because you'd rather look at the scoreboard or the replays. So they've got this countdown going, meaning you got to switch between ends and overs in 60 seconds. So the US in today's game went over this time limit for 3 consecutive overs. And what that means is they were hit with a 5-run penalty. So at that point in time, it was 35 of 30 that India needed. And all of a sudden, which by the way, 5 runs in the context of this game are a lot.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was down to run a ball with 2 set batsmen, and it just looked like a different story.
Yeah. I think once they were down to the last 4 overs, they kind of just went for it and it came off. But if you talk
Yeah.
about India's, I guess let's talk about the first innings for a second. So Arshdeep was probably the guy in the 15 who people weren't sure if he would be there, but he took 2 wickets in the first over, ended up with 4 wickets, got the man of the match as well. So he had quite a good start to the day.
Absolutely. I was very critical of him in the Pakistan game, but what I said was, if he gets a pitch where the ball can move, he can be very, very dangerous. And he showed that today, right? He got the movement, and he always lands it in the right areas. It's just when he doesn't get the movement, he doesn't have the pace to trouble too many top batsmen. So today he had favorable conditions, and he took full advantage of it, got the wickets. And the US captain who didn't play today because of a shoulder injury. So the new opener that came in, he was sad for him. He got a golden duck, and nobody would have survived that first ball, right? It was just the perfect pitch of a delivery. And I think you were talking about Sky and Dubey. So let me just go back to Dubey. Dubey, he came out with 31 of 35 balls not out, I believe. He got a 1-4 and 1-6, and the 4 was an edge that went to the third man boundary, if I recall correctly. And it was just the 1-6 he hit. But again, context of the game, the 6 was very important. I think what was important to note is I don't think he had any close calls during the game. So he did take his time. He did look. He didn't really look, he was comfortable, but not many have on this pitch. But I think the most important thing is he was there at the end, and both of them, took them.
I'm not sure why I heard this comment, but somebody said the New York pitch is not hard to survive in, it's only hard to score runs on, right? Which is probably was reflected in his game. But coming back to the first innings, so USA never really got going. They were obviously 3 for 2, and they were 56 for 4. But when Nitish Kumar came in, now he scored 27 or 23, which in the context of this pitch is probably a better strike rate than guys like Kohli, Rohit, Babar, Rizwan, Klaasen, Miller for that matter, right? So I think a great knock in the circumstances. But it took an incredible catch from Siraj right at the boundary. I was actually watching it from a distance at that point, and I wasn't sure if he actually hung on to the ball or not. That was an exceptional catch, close to the boundary, diving up and falling back. I've never seen Siraj feel like that before.
Yeah, I mean, when he hit it, I thought it was gone for 6, right? And then you could see the corner of the screen, Siraj running backwards, and I thought, yeah, it's going over to him, or he's just patting it over the fence. But then, yeah, what a great finish. He hung on, and anytime a fast bowler, feels like that, it's always a special moment. So and I think we've talked about it so many times in these close games. It's these high pressure moments, is these fine margins that make a difference, right? And in this case, India took this great catch, and USA dropped a catch.
Yeah. In these run a ball games, like a wicket or a boundary is an event, right? It's not just another ball. But yeah, so I guess
the other thing I like to add, as you were talking about the US innings, is we've been talking about how they're just playing like a professional unit, right? And I think what happened today was also a sign of that. They already had a few wickets down. Typically in these associate nations, you've got 2 batsmen or 3 batsmen that are your mainstays. But in this case, like you mentioned, they had people coming in the middle order, lower middle order, who contributed. So
we're going to come to what India's campaign is looking like now, but very quickly on the qualification scenario. So India has now qualified. The US has 1 more game against Ireland. It's straightforward. If they win that game, they qualify as the second team instead of Pakistan, based on the seedings. If the US lose that game, then they still have a shot as long as Ireland can either beat Pakistan or that game is a washout. So the only way the US does not make it right now is if they lose to Ireland and Pakistan beats Ireland. If any of those results do not happen, the US will qualify. So they're looking pretty good to qualify. So a small point that's happened in this game, as after today's game, US's NRR is actually lower than Pakistan's now already. So the NRR is not a factor in this group anymore. It's simply down to results. If US manages to If the only way Pakistan qualifies is if USA loses to Ireland and then Pakistan beats Ireland. Otherwise, the USA is going through. But Umar, coming back to India's campaign, now India has only played in New York so far, and this may be a controversial statement for Indian fans, but I almost feel like the New York track probably helps India because they don't necessarily have the same explosive batsmen, perhaps like South Africa, Australia, England, and even the West Indies. So I feel like this kind of track has actually helped them somewhat. What kind of start do you think India's had in the tournament? I know they've been 3 games now, and how do you see that going forward? Overall?
Well, to add, I'll say something even more controversial is that, they're the one team that has had a home ground,
Yeah.
and they've been playing in the same conditions. So they have had that advantage for sure, right? While other teams have been, as we're reading in the news, taking late night flights to make it to different cities and adjusting and acclimatizing and all that.
Yeah.
India has been in the same hotel and playing in the same ground. So there has been a very clear advantage. I mean, no doubts about that, right? In terms of how their campaign has started, I don't think it's gone off to an explosive start. But of course, top teams manage to win their games despite hurdles, and that's what they've achieved. So I think they're looking good. Their top 2 batsmen haven't come to the party yet, and as soon as one of them finds form, I think they'll be a side to reckon with. They still got people like Kuldeep, as we spoke about in the last game, sitting on the bench that can bring in more firepower into the bowling. I think they're looking good. They just, again, to finish well, to win the World Cup, they need to continue to improve. If they keep playing like they are, it may
And I
not
guess
be.
there's 2 ways to break this down. So you can either say, you know what, it's the conditions and this is how people bat, or you can say that Rohit and Kohli haven't really got going. And if you think of the biggest call India made once they arrived in the USA, it was to open with Kohli and Rohit. And that hasn't really come off so far. Rohit always opens, but Kohli at probably, this might be his lowest aggregate after 3 matches of an ICC tournament in his career. And I get this is New York, but still. So I think that probably is a bit of a concern for India, I imagine. And I'm assuming they hope once they go out of New York, that might change.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, again, I mentioned this in the last one, right? One of the highlights of this tournament for me is the diversity and variety of the grounds. So I think it'll be about adaptability, and I'm enjoying the contest, to be honest. I don't think I'm missing the 200-run ball games. These are fun.
Yeah, I think these run a ball games are great, right? They're like ODIs from back in the day where run a ball would be a tense chase. And it's like, I agree with you. I think especially with all the overdose of this 200 plus scores we see, and we'll probably see some more as the tournament goes on. So going back to India, so I think Punt's doing well at 3, and now I guess Dubey and Skya among the runs. India has only picked 3 quicks in the squad, and they've been playing all 3 so far, which makes me think that they don't expect to be playing all 3 once they go on to the West Indies. So expect one of them to probably sit out, and I guess a Kuldeep to come into the 11. Which one at this point? Who of Siraj or Arshdeep would you make sit? By the way, if you had to do that.
Yeah, I mean, Arshdeep performed today. He's a very good new ball bowler. Siraj has been okay. I don't think Siraj has been has done anything too special. So based on after today, Siraj makes way for Kuldeep.
Yeah, which is probably not where they would have been when they started the tournament, right? So
yeah, and it's not an easy decision because, towards the back end, I don't know, I think Arshdeep definitely bowls in the back end, but given his pace and given the grounds in the West Indies, I don't know how much you trust him. But then Pandya's in good bowling form, so that helps.
And I mean, India still has a game against Canada left, which has no significance at all as far as India is concerned now because they've qualified. And who you play is only dependent on what seed you are, not where you finish in the group. But India's Super 8 likely opponents are likely at this point to be, I mean, Australia is definite because they've qualified. It's likely to be, I mean, it's probably going to be Bangladesh, because Sri Lanka is unlikely to qualify now. If Bangladesh is playing Netherlands tomorrow, if they win that game, they're going through, so instead of Sri Lanka. So it'll be Bangladesh, Australia, and then the third spot is either New Zealand or possibly Afghanistan. So it looks like Afghanistan will go through. What's not clear is it at the expense of West Indies or New Zealand? But if New Zealand lose their game to West Indies tomorrow, then it looks like Afghanistan will be. So India could potentially be looking at a Super 8 group where they take on Australia, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. And all they would need to do to qualify, even before they play Australia, is beat Afghanistan and Bangladesh. So interesting times for India. I think moving on to a couple of other games. So I think I'll segue into this. West Indies are taking on New Zealand. By the time people are probably watching this episode, chances are that match would have happened because the match is starting in about 4 hours. Starts at, I think, 5:30 a.m. Pakistan time on Thursday. It's at Trinidad. The West Indies haven't lost a game yet. New Zealand have only played one, and they were hammered by Afghanistan for 80 runs. If the West Indies win this game, they have actually qualifying. New Zealand's campaign is effectively over within 2 games. But if New Zealand beats the West Indies, then it's quite interesting because then the Afghanistan-West Indies game becomes crucial. And it could be in a situation where it's a three-way tie where these three teams are level on points and it comes into run rate. And so far, Afghanistan's run rate is well above anybody else because of the massive margin they beat New Zealand with. So anyway, interesting times. But Omar, how do you see this West Indies-New Zealand game that's happening in Trinidad in a few hours? I won't get to see it because I'll be asleep, but you'll be in the USA, so maybe you will.
It'll be prime time for us. 7:30 p.m. is when they kick it off. My money's on West Indies. I'm looking forward to. We haven't had too many big clashes so far, right, in this tournament. So this would be one of the big ones. Looking forward to it. My money's on West Indies, and I expect they're big hitters, and that they come to the party. New Zealand, I don't think their best team has played too many games together in the last, I don't know, 10 or 10 T20. So maybe there's a little bit of the combination and stuff they're figuring out. They don't look to be the team in form, especially after that how they lost to Afghanistan. But yeah, I see West Indies going through at home.
Also, it's important to remember that more than half the New Zealand side was at the IPL, but they weren't actually playing. They were barely got game time. So they've actually spent 2.5 months sitting on the sidelines in India. And so it's not like they've actually been match ready. And they also chose not to play any warm-up games, by the way, like Pakistan and England. But in the case of Pakistan and England, well, it hasn't really worked for them. In the case of Pakistan and England, they were playing a series last week before they came in. New Zealand has not played a game in a while. So it was an odd choice.
Sitting in India, just refreshing their bank account page.
Basically. But that's West Indies, New Zealand. There's another game I mentioned, Bangladesh, Netherlands. And if Bangladesh win that, Sri Lanka effectively is out. Bangladesh qualifies. But the other big group is England, Australia, Scotland, Oman, and Namibia. Now, England against Scotland, the first game was a washout. The second game, England lost to Australia by a massive margin. And then Scotland actually went ahead and beat Oman. They chased down, I think, that they 150 total in something like 12 or 13 overs, which means that England has to beat Oman and Namibia. Scotland only has one game left to Australia. Even if they lose that, England and Scotland will be level on points. But the difference in run rate is so massive already that for England to actually qualify, let's say if Scotland only loses to Australia by 20 runs and England beats both the teams by 40 runs, they will still not qualify. So that's how big the gap is. So England needs 2 massive wins. And anything like, and there's a lot of rain in the region in the next 3-4 days, apparently, right? So a little bit of rain, one washout for England, and that could be the end of their World Cup as well. So interesting times.
I mean, any team that can do it is probably the England batting lineup, right? But they need to show up. Unlike the last World Cup, they need to show up. And this World Cup so far. So, but yeah, to your point on the weather, I think a lot of these. I hope that a lot of these final positions aren't dependent on the weather, because the weather in Florida or the next entire week is looking like storms every day. And typically in the south, when it storms, it comes down pretty bad.
So that's the thing, right? We spoke about the Pakistan, USA, India group. USA, Ireland is also Florida on Friday. The forecast is horrific. And then Pakistan, Ireland is Sunday with forecast is still pretty bad. So so let's see how this turns out. But again, I think England, Oman, taking on Oman, that's at midnight tomorrow, Pakistan time. So it'll be, I guess, late morning in afternoon in North America. And again, critical game for England. They probably want to win by a 50-run margin or more. And again, there's a lot of talk about how in cricket, unlike football, you don't have the last games happening concurrently, right? So England will play both their games before Scotland plays Australia. So Scotland will go into that match knowing exactly what they need to do to actually qualify. And Australia has a track record of doing things like go slow, etc. in '99, where they wanted to keep a certain side out. So Cricket for just put up a post 2 hours ago saying March could be sanctioned if they do a deliberate go slow, etc., etc. So I'm not sure why Cricket would put that up already, given that nothing like that has happened, but they already posted that. But there's a lot of talk about that. And the fact that, either way, I think what remains, what's definitely true is Scotland will play in the end. So when they go into that game, they will know exactly what they need to do to qualify and kick England out.
Scotland looked like an exciting team, right? I think even the game that was washed out, they had 90 for no loss.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. It was a rain-shortened game, but England had to score 95 in 10 overs to win that game, which is not a given at all. So who knows whether England was saved or... But what that means, Omar, is if England were to go home, and assuming Pakistan were to go home, the Super 8's group looks like USA, Scotland, South Africa, who are already there, and potentially either West Indies or if Afghanistan is going that expense. So you could have a group with South Africa, Afghanistan, England, sorry, South Africa, Afghanistan, USA, and Scotland.
Scotland. Wow.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
But yeah, so those of you who are watching, if you have a view on on how you think India is going to do in the tournament, and B, who you think is going to qualify, please leave a comment. Omar, any final thoughts on how the World Cup's shaping up and what you're looking forward to seeing in the next couple of days, other than rain?
Very exciting. I think, yeah, I think as a neutral fan, it's been a great World Cup with different teams like the USA and Scotland are popping up. So I think that's great for cricket. Yeah, excited.
And thank you for being on the show, Omar.
Thanks, Reese.
For those of you watching, we'll be back in the next couple of days. In the meantime, stay tuned for the shiny side.